Hello, everyone. Welcome, one and all. This is the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, back once again with our third-time recurring guest, Mr. Alan Howell, host of the Howell Underground YouTube channel and the Revolution or Bust podcast. And this is sort of being published across both platforms. So we're both playing the role of host and guest at the same time. So thank you to my guest and co-host, Alan Howell.
Does that mean we're a ghost?
Yeah, right. We're a guest. Yeah, there you go. That's very good. I wanted to talk to you one more time, obviously, before Election Day. And I know you've been talking about Noam Chomsky quite a bit, and I finally wrote a piece about Chomsky in response to a couple of recent interviews that he gave, one on the Bad Faith podcast to Brianna Joy Gray and Virgil, Texas, and then an interview that he gave to Salon. And so I guess we'll just kind of go back and forth on this since, like I said, we're both playing host and guest at the same time. So I suppose my first question to you, Alan, is what is your first question to me?
Okay, I read your article and I agreed as I went down, and then I got to the part where you said, now let's consider where he's correct. I happen to agree with Chomsky's opinion that hoping to influence the Democratic Party years down the road is a foolish reason to withhold your vote from Joe Biden in November of 2020. So you may have guessed as you wrote that sentence that I would read it and that I would think, no, because that blows the whole idea of electoral leverage out of the water. You also go on, and it seems as though you're talking about the DNC leadership. And everything you say about what you say about them makes sense. But when we're talking about rank and file comfy Democrats, the blue dog Democrats that we interact with on our Facebook feeds, I would say that if we could guarantee them, we leftists could guarantee them every time that they're going to lose, if we had 80% Bernie or bust instead of 20%, for example, if we could say to them every single time, we're going to make sure that the Democrats lose because we're not going to be there for corporate candidates. If you have a non-corporate candidate, we'll think about it, although we're kind of getting weary of sheepdogs like Bernie and AOC. So, fool us enough times and we're going to even reject them. But I would ask you, so my first question for you is, how would the comfy Dems react if we leftists could guarantee every time that we could make them lose, and would they then apply pressure to the leadership that would cause the leadership to cave in?
Okay, so let me just first back this up a little bit, just reminding our audience in case some of our audience members didn't do their homework and read the article. The main point of the article was that Chomsky is using sort of old hackneyed corporate media talking points in order to shame progressives, leftists like Brianna Joy Gray and Virgil, Texas, into supporting Biden. And the main thrust of the article is that he's wrong to do that. So the article was not meant as a full-throated defense of Noam Chomsky, obviously. Now, this is a specific section that you are talking about here. And so the question, would it work? In other words, if we could get enough people in enough numbers to prove to the comfy Democrats who support corporate candidates in Democratic primaries, could we prove to them that they will no longer win unless they nominate, sorry, I'm having lighting issues here because I'm near a window in the afternoon hour, but that's all right. Could we prove to them that their candidates will not be successful unless they nominate our candidates in Democratic primaries? That's sort of the gist of your question?
Yeah, and we're a long way from that. And the part later in the article where you say we haven't built up our power structures yet is absolutely right. But
I think those things are inseparable, right? I think they're the same question. And that's the issue I have with Brianna and Virgil's take, because they're talking about electoral leverage in terms of influencing Democrats to nominate good Democrats. And I think that we are much better off building our own institutions and ideally our own political parties, i.e., movement for a People's Party. So we can run our own candidates in general elections without going through this added step of asking an institution that hates us to bend to our will. In other words, why are we asking the Democratic Party for permission to run the candidates that we want to run? Why don't we just run them like Kshama Sawant just ran in Seattle on the Socialist Alternative Party ticket? When MPP gets on the ballot, we'll just run candidates on the MPP ballot. We don't have to ask these Democrats. We have to bargain with these comfy liberals saying, hey, do what we want so that we can run on your party's ticket. That seems like an unnecessary middle step. It seems like something that is not likely to work. And one of the reasons it's not likely to work is because of the party system, the party process, closed primaries. Look what happened in Iowa this year, right? The party leadership has all kinds of ways to slam the door in our face, as they've proven now in 2 consecutive cycles. So I'm not against electoral leverage as a principle, but I think we need institutional power in order to make that work. I don't think we can continue to just run this sort of ragtag army of leftists against this Democratic Party machine, because the machine is going to crush us every time. The way we have to do this, we have to build our own independent institutional power bases, such as Sunrise Movement, such as DSA, such as MPP. Now, you were right to point out, like, our revolution, right? Because, you know, they're committed to an inside the Democratic Party strategy, right? I mean, they're not backing independent candidates.
Well, what about MPP not agreeing to support the Green Party? What about so the second question would be, what about if we're needing to build our own structures, which I totally agree with, what would happen then if we didn't endorse? Here's a better way to say it. What would be the effect on the DNC if we said we're never going to vote for your candidates again? Would that have any positive outcome? And what outcome has it had? What outcome has it had when we endorse their candidate? Does like George Carlin would put it, when we vote for someone, we're endorsing them. Haven't they used our endorsements to use power against us?
Well, I mean, I think they've used our endorsements against us in the sense that they use the endorsements of some people like Chomsky to put out bullshit articles, like that article in testset.io. Remember? First of all, let me just say a word about that. That's based in Lebanon. Now, if that were based in Moscow and it were advocating against voting for Joe Biden, would that not be considered foreign interference by all these libs, right? In other words, you put the shoe on the other foot, right? So that testset.io is not a US-based website. And so if they were making progressive arguments, you know for a fact that the other side would be coming in our face saying, how could you trust this? Meanwhile, they write an article about how, what was it? Angela Davis, who?
Angela Davis.
Davis, right? Yeah, she's voting for Biden and you have to, right? So I know, so that's just a bullshit thing. But they use it against us. But one of the reasons they use it against us is because there is this built-in pretense that we owe something to their party. Why? Because we're Democrats. We ran in their primary, right? And so they use the sense that they use the fact that we are kind of leeching off of their institution in order to try to have our way with their institution.
So what's the argument then that we shouldn't vote for them? What's the argument then that it doesn't matter whether or not we vote for them? Doesn't voting for them give them something that they want from us?
Oh, sure it does.
And that's why we shouldn't do it.
I'm not saying that Brianna and Virgil are wrong. I'm just saying that the long-term strategy, what they said, they gave as their rationale, right, for withholding support from Joe Biden, is that if we continue to show the Democrats that we will vote for them no matter what, that they will take us for granted. And that their rationale for withholding support from Joe Biden was to teach Democrats a lesson, quote unquote. We hear that all the time, right? Show them that they have to take the left more seriously. And The Democrats draw their power. The reason this institution is as powerful as it is because they get boatloads of money from very rich people, from very rich corporations, and from very powerful financial institutions. And so if we were to ever, by some miracle, infiltrate this party and take it over, guess what? All of their funding would bail. And we would be left with a hollowed out institution with a toxic brand name called the Democratic Party that alienates the half of the people who don't vote and some of these sort of like more populist, Trump, Obama to Trump voters who might be persuadable by a populist left movement that is not, stuck with this big branding problem of being the Democratic Party.
Okay, but I don't see. I'm sorry, I don't see I don't see the downside to withholding our vote, and I still don't see how you can say I happen to agree with Chomsky's opinion that hoping to influence the Democratic Party years down the road is a foolish reason to withhold your vote from Joe Biden in November of 2020. I
didn't say it's bad to withhold your vote. I just said that I agree with his assessment that if you are withholding your vote, there are principled reasons to withhold your vote if you want to withhold your vote. I almost put this paragraph in there. I took it out for length purposes and flow purposes. It actually took me 5 days to write this article, the longest I ever spent on a piece, because there was so much decision making as like what to include, what not to include, because it's a big topic and there's all kinds of, tentacles and stuff. But I actually had a paragraph about Chris Hedges in there at one point. Hedges' argument for not voting for Joe Biden is, look, for me, it's personal. He said that on the Katie Halper show. He said, look, I spent time in Gaza. I've spent 10 years teaching in jails. He says, I've gotten to know too many victims of Israeli apartheid. I've gotten to know too many victims of that 1994 crime bill. And I'm just not voting for someone who funds the apartheid state and whose fingerprints are all over that crime bill. And that's it. That's it. That's why I'm not voting. It's personal for me. My allegiance is to them. That's what he said. And he said, look, he even admitted, he said, look, if you want to call me impractical, fine. That's why I'm not doing it. That's a better reason. That's a simpler, more respectable, in my opinion, principled stance than trying to come up with this convoluted theory about how, if we starve the beast, maybe the beast will take us more seriously and cater to our demands in the future. I don't think the Democratic Party is ever going to cave to us. And I think you're correct in drawing a distinction between the leadership and the rank and file, in the sense that I think the rank and file genuinely wants to beat Republicans, whereas the leadership is less concerned about that, right? The DNC leadership, of course, would rather lose to Trump than have Bernie win. We've said that a million times on this show, and I have to say that again. However, look, if we're assessing like the character of individual people, then I think you're totally right about that. Functionally speaking, I think they're more or less the same, because I think the Democratic base is just so weak and stupid and brainwashed and so susceptible to media propaganda, to Hollywood propaganda, to the talking points of their own candidates. There was a poll that came out recently that had, for the 2024 Democratic nomination, top of the list at 37%, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, 37%. This is someone who got 0 in the primary, who had to drop out to avoid total embarrassment before the first votes were cast. Joe Biden gives her the VP. She tells, Mike Pence, excuse me, I'm speaking. She has a Yas Queen moment on TV. She goes from 0 to 37. Now, you think she's running away with it at 37. No, she's not. In second place at 35, Andrew Cuomo. Add those numbers together. 72% of Democratic voters want either Kamala Harris or Andrew Cuomo. In 2024.
All right, they're brain dead.
We're going to take this party over? We are not taking this party over.
All right,
no
okay. All right. Before I forget, so if we inherit a hollowed out party that has a horrible
which we're not
marketing
going to be
problem,
able to do. We're not going to take it over.
All right.
72% of them want Harris or Cuomo.
That's not what I was going to say. So if we did, it would be stupid. Okay, but what if we simply leave them. I totally agree with you that we should stay outside the party. I'm not arguing that we should try to take over this horrible party that should just be relegated to the dustbin of history. What I'm saying is, why do we keep aiding and abetting it in sort of a like alcoholic, like if we had a codependent relationship? Why do we keep propping them up with our votes? Why don't we just stop voting for them and let them be a hulk and let them lose every time and go about our business forming outside power? Why should anyone think it's a good idea to vote for Joe Biden if you're a leftist?
Well, look, like I said, I'm not arguing with their decision not to vote for Joe Biden. I'm just pointing out that they leave themselves open to these retorts when they say that the reason they're not doing it is because they want the Democrats to meet their demands in the future. Okay, what they have to say is we're not voting for Democrats because we're not Democrats. We're not doing this anymore.
All right, I agree with that too. But let's say down the road we say that we have our own structures now, and we're going to be be our own party. We're not libs anymore. We're not Dems anymore. We're whatever we are going forward. Leftists of labor, whatever you want to call us, but not libs anymore. So let's say going forward, we come up with our own structures and we think about the Breonna Joy Grays, and we think about the Bernie Sanders and the AOCs, and we think about our own people that don't take money, and we think, what have we built? And if we've built something that's going to go against, and small dollar donations, I don't want to forget to say that. So we have small dollar donations and we fund it from the people themselves. What are we going to have then compared to what we have now?
Well, we will have institutional power that we can organize, right? I mean, so look, just to give an example, and this is why I say, like, these are the same question, because going back to your earlier question, well, why shouldn't we be insisting? Like, why am I not as insistent as you are that nobody vote for Joe Biden, right? The reason is because we haven't built those institutions yet. And so we haven't given people another place to go yet. That's the point. We need to give people another place to go so that we don't have to spend general election season after general election season having the same exact debate of, do we cave and vote for the Democrat, or do we suck it up? I mean, or do we say no and walk away? We can't just walk away if we have no place else to go. Or we can't make as convincing a case that people should walk away without giving them a place to go, because people have to feel like this is a productive and constructive project. It has to be bigger than just a protest movement against the Democratic Party. We need to build real power, and we need to wield that power on behalf of ordinary people who desperately need people in power wielding it for their benefit. And so, an organization like DSA now probably has about 100,000 members, right? So they backed Bernie in this race, but they only had 100,000 members. What if they had 1 million members, right? What if Sunrise Movement had hubs all throughout the country and could organize and fundraise and phone bank on certain candidates' behalf? Now you have organized institutional power bases that you can draw from and convert that into electoral campaigns. Right now, we don't have that. We're just getting that off the ground. And I think a big part of why we're getting that off the ground is because the Bernie campaigns gave the left a certain confidence that they didn't have prior to them, which is a great service that he did. Yeah. And so that's, I think, the argument to be made, that we just have to build these institutional powers and forget about influencing Democrats. Forget about winning the libs over in Democratic primaries. If some of them are radicalized by the fact that, let's say, Joe Biden with a Democratic Senate will not pack the court, it's relevant, I think, to this conversation that by the time anyone hears it will be Monday. That this is the day that Amy Coney Barrett is getting confirmed. Where was this big fight that the Democrats were going to put up? right? We heard we heard a month ago when Ruth Bader Ginsburg, this is the fight of our lives, right? Even some of the Democrats came out and said that. This is it. We go all in. What happened? Nothing.
So what do you think about the lefty pundits who won't tell their comfy audiences? Because if you think about it, Kyle Kalinske, David Dole, Mike Figueredo, even not so much Jimmy Dore. I see his audience is a little more blue collar, but still well informed. And so what do you think happens when we're trying to build confidence? And I didn't say this yet today, but I said it in my show yesterday, that I agree with you at the end where you say that we need to keep our confidence up and that Chomsky is eroding it. But the lefty pundits who won't even find the courage to tell their comfy audiences, no, you can't vote for corporatists. No, we need to leave this party behind. They're not saying that. And so when you talk about a controlled opposition person, you say that they temper the convictions of their followers. That's a really powerful thing that controlled opposition does. Whether Chomsky is getting paid by the oligarchs or not, he's certainly tempering the convictions of his followers in the same way that Gabriel Riquetti did in the French Revolution. He's working, whether he's getting paid or not, he's working for the king.
Well, he is getting paid in a sense. I mean, he teaches at MIT. So, I mean, these elite colleges are establishment.
Yeah. He's part of the professional managerial class for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So what happens when these lefty pundits are too chicken shit to say to their audiences, hey, you need to not follow Bernie. Don't do what Bernie says. Do what Noam Chomsky said over his entire career, instead of when they trot him out every 4 years to tell us to vote for the lesser evil candidate. Follow what Chomsky mostly says instead of this garbage that he says every 4 years. Why don't the lefty pundits come out? And so if you're tempering the convictions of them, I think one of the strongest ways that they can prove they're not sheepdogs is by saying, do not vote for corporate candidates under any circumstances. And I think that would have some effect on the comfy Dems who watch their shows. And so I've been insisting, I don't think anyone else, not even Tim Black or Jimmy Dore, has been insisting all along that we stand steadfast behind the idea of Bernie or bust, never Biden, never corporatists. Why is nobody else saying that? And if they did, I think we would have a chance to be the spine. You talk about the spine in your article, that we have to prove that we have a spine. I don't think anything else would prove it more than if we stopped voting for corporate candidates, no matter who.
So I think the reason why people are hesitant to do that, it's the same reason why I've been hesitant to do that, is because we don't have the institutional power structure set up to give people a sense of what they can do. We're not giving anybody, this comes off as very disempowering to people, because the effect of sitting it out is letting Donald Trump win and, just running roughshod over the country for 4 more years. Now, we say, well, of course, there's danger of that. But at a certain point, you have to draw the line and say, past this point, I'm not willing to support you. But I think
why won't we tell them that the reason we have Donald Trump is because, and some of us do that, more of us, but yes, we need to say the reason you have Donald Trump is because you're so chicken shit that you won't withhold your vote. So your point is we need to tell them what to do instead of what not to do. But I think we still need to insist what they not do is vote for corporate candidates that lead us to get somebody even worse than Donald Trump going forward.
Well, look, I think if I am, going to play Nostradamus here, I think Biden will win. I think that the nomination in 2024 will go to Harris, either by hook or by crook. And she will get blown out by some demagogic right-wing lunatic who will then probably get reelected. I think Trump would have been reelected if not for COVID. Yep. I think the country and the world is moving in a right-wing populist direction because of the failures of neoliberalism. And so I do think we're on a road to hell, even if Biden wins. That's my sincere opinion. I think Biden's presidency could be drowned in the bathtub if the Democrats don't take the Senate, in which case nothing will get done. And the Republicans will take back over again, and we'll be right back where we are now. That's what I think is going to happen. Again, I think that until we have to get to work on building our own organizations. We cannot be playing this sort of like hostage game with this party that hates us, and the leadership hates us. The leadership is operating in bad faith, and even a lot of their good faith supporters are just too under the spell of the party and the media and Hollywood. I mean, the sickness of these people. I have an email that was sent for me that I fished out just because I knew this point was going to come up. They think we're Russian agents. They think you and I are Russian. This is an email I got from a woman named Eileen, and I won't say her last name. Well, she didn't give her last name. I don't want to, out anybody here. This is on March 22nd of this year. I get an email. My friends have indicated, this is a serious email. My friends have indicated that they believe your site is authored by Russians. Can you offer some proof that you are American citizens and that this site is legitimate? Thank you. You know how sick in the head a person has to be to write an email like that? Seriously? Literally asking me for proof of citizenship because I wrote an article that they disagreed with? I'm sure this woman is a nice enough woman. I'm sure she's not as craven as the DNC leadership, but functionally, she's the same. She's just a foot soldier. She's brainwashed enough to do whatever the fuck they say. And so I think what we have to do is we have to say enough. We're not willing to put ourselves in this situation ever again. This has to be the last time that we are talking about whether or not to support the Democrat. We shouldn't even be having this conversation. If we wouldn't be having this conversation, by the way, if half the volunteers at Movement for a People's Party didn't go off and volunteer for Bernie. Carol, who runs media over there, when she came on my show, she said, look, we'd be on the ballot right now if half of our movement didn't go off and try and get Bernie nominated this time. We knew that was a waste of time. That's why we sat back and we built this institution that's going to run our own candidates independent of this Democratic Party. Too many people thought it was a good idea to go off and try and get Bernie Sanders nominated. If they hadn't done that, if they stuck with the original plan, then we'd have a candidate on the ballot right now, at which point it would be never Trump, never Biden. Why? Right. Because we'd have a candidate on the ballot to tell people to vote for. We don't have that now.
Let's make a pact right now that when AOC runs for president, we'll say, ha, we've seen this before. Let's make a blood pact that no progressives, no leftists will get lured into the sheepfold ever again. As long as it's a Democrat, we don't vote for it. Would we be willing to say that? You might, maybe, but Kyle, David, Mike, and so forth, they're not going to say it because they don't want to piss off the people. So we're still on this horrible slope, this slippery slope of trying to do it both ways. I agree with you that we should completely exit, and I think we should insist that our lefty fellows that are talking to people, more than a few every day, ought to insist that no longer, because you see the catch-22 in your argument, I think. You see, well, we haven't built it yet, so they won't come. But they, if we don't have a spine yet, then we can't build it. So if we're going to have a spine, we have to say no more Democratic Party, no matter how nice we think they are. We just have to say it. Nope. No matter what they say about being progressive, no. We're done with Democrats, period. Now, how many lefty pundits are going to take that blood pact? I don't think many.
Well, here's the thing. I will take that blood pact. With a possible, look, by the time AOC is a viable national candidate, I know people have these pipe dreams about her running in 2024. She's not ready to run yet. And by not ready to run yet, I don't mean she doesn't have the experience, the knowledge of the skills. So fucking Donald Trump became president. That shit doesn't matter.
Ronald Reagan, too.
All right, Ronald Reagan. That's irrelevant. The fact is, AOC, for a number of reasons, some of which are bullshit, some of which are legit, she's not a nationally popular figure just yet. She is not a viable presidential candidate just yet. I wish she were. I love AOC. but that's just the fact. Maybe in 20 years, when a lot of the boomers who, think that she's stupid, they like to talk about how, she costs, because I know a lot of, older, men saying, could you believe she blew that deal in New York for Amazon? She wouldn't give them the benefits. It turns out they're totally wrong. They didn't take the benefits. They came to New York anyway, right? So, but for whatever reasons, she's not a nationally viable figure yet. By the time she becomes one, the Democratic Party might look very different.
What if she were, though?
But that's at least 20 years down the road.
What if she were, though? What if she were ready to go next time? What would you say then? You still wouldn't do it?
I would say no. No, because we're going to be stuck having the same conversation right now. I could use this same exact recording in 4 years, and I would just have to go in and edit out certain names and swap them out. No, no. In 4 years, but here's the thing, Alan. In 4 years, who is going to run? There's not going to be. I said this in the last time we talked. The Bernie thing was very unique. You had an independent who was a senator who had some name ID, who was able to translate that name ID in 2016 into national celebrity status, and then entered the second race as one of the quote unquote front runners. And so there was reason to believe that it might work this time. Who is going to run in 4 years?
Okay, so what if somebody...
Viable? Hold on one second, because this is a very important. But this is a very important question. Who is going to run in 4 years? Who is good enough on the issues and hostile enough to the forces that run the Democratic Party, who has a chance to win, where we're even going to have a movement behind that candidate? I would argue there is none.
What if Bernie drank the fountain from the fountain of youth, and Bernie came back? I would say that I would take the blood pact that I wouldn't support him, because he has to operate at the good graces of Chuck Schumer. He has no seniority. He's not going to get the committee appointments everyone thinks he's going to get. That's a pipe dream.
No, of course, Joe Bernoli.
I'm quoting Joe Bernoli, but he says there's no way in hell they're going to give Bernie or AOC anything. But if we had somebody shovel ready to go, somebody with Bernie's stature and experience, I would still say if their head is up the asses of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein and so forth, no matter how great they think they're going to do, Bernie wouldn't be able to do what he needs to do. He won't be able to do what he thinks he's going to be able to do if Biden wins. They're not going to give him squat.
There was that story that he's hoping to be labor secretary.
No way.
I don't even have a joke good enough to demonstrate how ridiculous that is.
It's not going to happen. And so we're going to have nothing. So we should never do this.
He'll become a fighter pilot before he becomes labor secretary.
Yeah. So even if somebody like Bernie came along next time, we should still refuse to support them if they're under the auspices of the Democratic Party. If they're beholden in any way to the Democratic Party, we should say nope. And look at this pattern. We've had the sheepdog candidate for a long time. And one of my shows was Jesse Jackson was one. What was Kucinich was one. Howard Dean was one. Yeah, and there's always a sheepdog. There's always a horrible person. George W. Bush, I remember, he was so horrible that we have to vote for the lesser evil candidate no matter what. They're always going to have a horrible Republican. They're always going to have a sheepdog. It's the same play with different people acting in it every time.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think in Bernie's case, there was the added factor that he was not even a Democrat. How many times did you hear them say that, right? Yeah, He's not a member of our club, right? So the best you're going to get, and this is not remotely good enough, the best you're going to get is an Elizabeth Warren type thing. And even Elizabeth Warren, they made pretty clear that they weren't going to let her win either. I mean, they wouldn't have pulled out all the stops against Warren the way they did against Bernie with the coalescing. But as soon as Warren put out her Medicare for All numbers, right? Remember, there was that brief period where she put out what she considered a serious plan to finance Medicare for All. Nancy Pelosi said, no, I'm not for Medicare for All. What happened? Elizabeth Warren backed down immediately, right? And that was like, she was like the Bernie light candidate, right? So that's, but what I'm saying is, We don't even have to fantasize if Bernie drank from the fountain of youth. There's no other candidate remotely like Bernie who's going to run in 2024.
But there will be
under
a
the
sheepdog.
Democratic ticket.
There will always be a sheepdog.
Right. But the thing is, our movement right now is to the point. I spend enough time on these forums and these message boards, and I know you do too. Not everybody has it in them to boycott the Biden ticket right now, but almost all of them, I think, have it in them to spot at a Warren type when they see them.
Yeah.
And they're not going to go for that. They're not going to go for that. So in other words, what we are staring down here in terms of presidential politics is a situation where we're not going to elect a president that we feel good about in 4 years. And now I hope a miracle happens and the MPP candidate wins in 4 years. I realize that is remarkably unlikely to happen, but we have an opportunity in 4 years if we start organizing right now to start chipping away at Democratic Party support. The goal is in 4 years to get as many votes, and I think we can get millions of votes. I think, and I'm a proponent of MPP. I think they're going to nominate someone in 4 years with genuine star power who has the ability to get millions of votes. And my prediction, I'll go on the record right now, is they will do better in the 2024 race in terms of raw popular vote. I don't know if they're going to get ballot access in every single state, but in terms of raw popular vote, my guess is they are going to do better than a Green Party candidate has ever done. And I think that is a major step forward in terms of building the kinds of independent institutions that we need to build. Okay. Now, part of that. Now, go ahead. I'll let you talk.
I have one question about that. How are we going to keep the money from corrupting the MPP any more than we kept it from corrupting the DNC? How are we going to ensure that no dark money, taints them? Because if they can't even tell us not to vote for Biden, I don't have much confidence that they have the spine that you're talking about in your article.
I mean, I think the reason, we've talked about this before, but I think the reason they're not doing that is because they don't want to fracture their movement, number one. And number two, look, I am of the opinion that it's going to be easier to radicalize liberals under Joe Biden with the Democratic Senate, because that's the only way you're going to prove to some of these well-meaning liberals that the Democrats are not going to ever go to bat for them. If we let's just say this happens. Let's just walk through this. I see you shaking your head.
I don't agree.
But,
yeah.
Okay. Well, Joe Biden wins. Democrats take the Senate. Amy Coney Barrett is on that court. It's a 6-3 majority, right-wing majority on that court. Joe Biden now and the Democratic Party has the full power to expand that court and protect abortion rights, LGBT rights, workers' rights, Obamacare, right? They have the full power to do that. Joe Biden has already said that if elected, he's going to form a bipartisan commission to reform the Supreme Court. First of all, Republicans have been wanting a conservative majority for decades. They finally got one. What makes you think that they're going to cooperate with Joe Biden's plan for a bipartisan commission to reform the court? That is such an unbelievably weak.
There's a major hole. There's a major hole in your premise. You're still assuming that they're not all corporatists. You're still assuming that there are two distinct parties, and they are.
No, but what I'm saying is, no, I'm not assuming that. I'm saying the liberals are assuming that. But it's going to take Democratic majority power, like the kind we had under Obama, to get them to understand that even if they have that power, even if the Democrats are in power, they're still not going to do anything.
Nothing. And they're going to have a conservative Supreme Court. You talk about packing the court. They're going to they're going to appoint all conservative judges. They're not going to let any left-wing judges in just because the Democrats are. If the Democrats appointed them all and they didn't use any Republicans, the reason we have a conservative Supreme Court and asshole federal judges all over this fucking country, the reason we have that is because of the Democrats colluding with the Republicans. We're not going to
Yes.
have a less conservative court because the Democrat and under Obama we didn't get squat. We got interventionary wars. We got people's losing their homes. We got big
Right,
banks bailed out. We're not going to get anything else under Biden. Why would you?
No, and look, that was a major missed opportunity under Obama for the left to raise the kind of consciousness around that we should have. If we had a left, if we had an awakened left in this country under Obama, the way we have now, to a certain extent,
we'll never get that if the lefty pundits don't pull their heads out.
Okay, all right, but hold on 1 second here.
We'll never get there. You talk about it like it's going to happen, like it's a pipe dream unless we get our leaders to tell us where to go, because people are sheeple. They're not going to go anywhere if the pundits don't say, hey, quit voting for Democrats.
Okay, but do you think that, I mean, look, what do you think is going to happen? Let's just say Biden wins, he gets the Senate, he refuses to pack the court. Obamacare, gone. Roe v. Wade, gone. Marriage equality, gone. Right? These 6 right-wing justices are just going piece by piece, lawsuit by lawsuit, undoing every piece of not necessarily even progressive legislation, undoing liberal legislation.
Right.
That the diehard Democratic base, the Women's March people, the Pussy Hat people really care about.
Yes.
And Joe Biden sitting there with 52 Democratic senators saying, I don't know, we don't want to nominate 2 more justices on the court. That could get messy. You know, the Republicans aren't going to like that very much. You don't think that's going to piss off a lot of liberals?
There'll be a brunch.
Point? You think so? I don't really think so. And I think, what is the effect of Trump getting reelected? The effect of Trump getting reelected is these liberals are all going to be like, well, if we could just get rid of Trump and the Republicans and put the Democrats back in power, then everything will be okay. In other words, the only way to prove to them,
they'll say you leftists need to vote for our candidate, and we'll say, no, look we've got our lefty pundits telling us never, ever, ever to vote for your candidate again, so you're just shit out of luck. And
well,
I think
look, no matter what happens in November, the work is being done now. I hope that work accelerates, and I hope that the lesson of this primary and the 2016 primary is no more running candidates through Democratic primaries. If we're running our candidates like Kshama Sawant or Jesse Ventura or Nina Turner or whoever they may be, they have to run on a third party line or, knock on wood, a new party line. All right. So that's the lesson moving forward, no matter who wins. However, I think you're going to get more liberals invested in that project if they see up close and personal the failure of Joe Biden and a Democratic majority Senate to do the bare minimum in protecting the things that they care very much about. I think if Donald Trump is reelected, it's going to be 4 more years of the same shit, where when we start pointing out to them the failures of the Democratic Party, they start sending me emails saying, hey, can you prove to my friends that you don't live in in Moscow? I mean, that's what it's going to be.
I still
with
don't
4 more years of Trump.
I still don't see why we should refrain from telling them not to vote for corporatists.
What's that?
I still don't see why we shouldn't prove that we have a spine. All of the lefty pundits should prove that they have a spine and that our movement has a spine. If all of the new party people are waffling back and forth, if they're so comfy and so deluded and so morning joed that they keep wanting to vote for corporate candidates, we're not gonna have a movement. I don't think we have a movement unless we can say as a block, if you're a leftist, you're not going to vote for Joe fucking Biden.
But what block? There is no block. We are deer in a forest. There are a lot of us, but we're not organized. We don't have a block. We need to build a block. That's what MPP is. That's what Sunrise Movement is.
Do. No, the lefty
pundits can only do so much. I mean, it's great to have a big YouTube channel.
They're not doing it.
Well, they are not doing. I mean, when you say they're not doing it,
Bernie or bust should have been everybody's main point since 2015.
Well, yeah, if we had started earlier, if we had started in 2015 and
they were
carried that
chicken.
through.
They didn't do
but
it.
we would have had to have, like I said, we would have had to have built another institution, an independent institution. If MPP had a candidate on the ballot right now, then we would all be there.
It's a
we would
vicious
all be
circle.
there. Now, I can't speak for, what's his name? Mike Figueredo or Kyle Kalinske or David Dole. Maybe they wouldn't. But I suspect some of them would. And my suspicion is that if we get through this election, no matter who wins, and I say if we get through, if we get through this election, if the country is not in complete shambles, if there's not a civil war in the weeks following this fucking election, right? But if we get through this, my suspicion is that enough people, and I don't know how the pundits go. I don't know how David Dole is going to run his show, or Kyle Kalinske or Mike Figueredo. I know Kyle was really hardcore. I'm not voting for Biden, and then he waffled on that. Mike Figueredo announced a couple weeks ago that he is voting for Biden, right? Cenk Uygur, that's a whole nother animal. But look, what I think is we got sucked back into the idea that we could take over the Democratic Party via the Bernie Sanders campaign. We got sucked back into that, and that kept us from doing the work that needed to be done in building our own left institutional power. And if my listeners think I'm a broken record on this because I've said it 10 times this episode, they can get used to hearing more of the same in the weeks and months to come, because that's going to be the major theme of this show. That is what we absolutely must do. I can't speak for how the other pundits are going to act. That's how I'm going to act, because that's what has to happen.
And if we had done that work,
then we wouldn't be in such a miserable situation where it's hopelessness on one side with Trump, hopelessness on the other side with Biden. And if both sides are hopeless, it's tough to make a case to people that they shouldn't do one thing, right? Because they see both futures as being totally hopeless.
Why not tell them, if you're willing, at least, that'll be something. If you're willing to tell them, hey, don't vote for corporatists. It's just not going to work. Stop doing that.
Again, once we get our own party off the ground.
No, it's a vicious circle.
It's easier
You'll
to
never
do that.
get there unless you've got people. I mean, what good is a people's movement for a people's party if the people have convictions that have been tempered? Because if you're going to break the vicious circle, Noam Chomsky had this right. And you alluded to the manufactured consent in your article. I thought that was wonderful. Mm-hmm. If Noam Chomsky is right, then the manufactured consent of the people matters a hell of a lot. So if we're going to break that, it's the lefty pundits who are going to do it. We have to unmanufacture their consent, or we will never get. You talk about we have to build it. I'd say the only way to break the vicious circle is first we have to get past the embargo of the mainstream media and get the word to all the people, all of the left-leaning, Dem-leaning people, that they can't keep voting for corporatists. And if they do that, they'll have the spine that you say is necessary to start a true movement. Because a movement that's mamby-pamby, a movement that has its convictions tempered by mainstream media and listens to Rachel Maddow every day or Chris Hayes every day, they're not going to go where you're going to wave the flag. You're going to say, who's with me? And they're just going to stare at you. They're not going to do anything.
But I think you're conflating two groups of people now. I don't think that the people who listen to shows like this and watch shows like yours on YouTube and stuff like that, I don't think they're influenced by Rachel Maddow. I think a lot of people feel like they're in a horrible situation now where two options are completely hopeless, and they're trying to pick which one provides at least an avenue for them to build power. There are some people, look, Joe Bernoli wrote an article. You shared it earlier. Joe, I've spoken to, he sent stuff to our blog. He's a great guy, very smart guy. A couple other people, a couple other writers who I've had on this show who I've talked to are trying to make an argument that lefties should hope Biden loses. I don't find those arguments convincing. I like those guys very much. I think they're very smart. I'm not convinced by that. Chris Hedges even said, I hope Trump loses. I don't want him to win. And I think that my reason is because I don't think there is any way to snap enough liberals out of that hypnosis, out of that slumber, but to prove to them that Democrats are not going to go to bat for them. And the only way to do that is to have a situation where they have the capacity.
I can't prove it
to go to bat for them, and they won't. You're saying so you're saying you can prove that they won't.
No, I can't prove it. I can't prove that it would help. But I'm saying that if we don't have the power to tell the people and to manipulate them, if you want to say it that way, or lead them, which is a better way to say it, not to support the Democratic Party corporatists, then we aren't going to have a group that can really get out in the streets, that can really do strikes. We have a bunch of people who are scab prone. When you want to hold the line and you're saying, okay, we all have to be together on this. If we have a real movement that's really going to do something, we can't expect someone like Bernie to do what we need if we're not giving him the mojo. And Bernie said that all along. He said, I can't do this alone. I've got to have the unions. I've got to have the protests. I've got to have everything, or I'm just one person. I'm not going to be able to overcome the establishment without your help. And he's right. And so, what kind of help does he need? And I think we're not going to give him the kind of support he needs just with numbers. We need to have those numbers be people who are educated and unindoctrinated. And that's why I'd say that it's a travesty that anybody who's talking to people like you are, like Kyle Kulinski is, and like Mike Figueredo, and then they say, well, yeah, maybe you should vote for the lesser evil candidate again. We don't have anything then. We don't have anything unless we can get together, at least the pundits, and say, hey, stop saying that. Sam Cedar, stop saying that. You asshole. Vosh, you fucking asshole. Stop telling people to vote for corporate candidates.
Well, I mean, I don't think people should be telling people to vote for corporate candidates either. And that's why...
Tell them not to.
I'm not telling to.
Tell them not to. Vote shame them the other way. You fucking scabs. Quit voting for corporatists. You're just giving them what they want. Stop.
The reason I'm not there to the point where I can insist that none of my listeners vote for Joe Biden is because I think we have a difference in terms of order of operations. I think we have to build a place for them to go first.
And I think it's the other way around.
And you think it's the other way around. All right. Well, look, that's just a disagreement, I guess, because I think you can't sell people on a hopeless vision of the future. You have to sell people on a future to believe in, was Bernie's first campaign.
Hope and change. We're just going to keep getting the same thing we've always gotten.
Well, look, man,
it's a pipe dream. We're never going to get there your way.
I was in the situation in 2008, 2009, 2010. I voted for Barack Obama in 2008. It was the first presidential candidate I ever voted for. It was the first election I ever voted in. I was 21 going on 22. That's right. Because in 2004, I was 17. I turned 18 in December of that year, so I couldn't vote in that year. But when Obama took office and he had that 60-seat majority in the Senate, and they could have passed any health care bill that they wanted, there was an opportunity there if we had a left that was awake to raise hell about the fact that he was going to Dennis Kucinich's district and whipping his vote against the public option rather than going to the Blue Dog Democrats districts and telling them that they better support a public option. If we had a real no bullshit left movement, we would have insisted on Medicare for all at that point. You have a 60-seat majority here. There is absolutely no excuse whatsoever. You have a majority in the House, 60 seats in the Senate. You have the presidency. You have a mandate of change after this disastrous Bush presidency. Now is when, if we had the wherewithal to do that, if we had the spine to do that, if we had the consciousness to do that, we could have done that. We didn't have it back then. We have some of that now. Do we have enough? No, we do not have enough. If we had enough, we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place.
How are we going to get there if the lefty pundits are spineless dimwits? are sellouts or
because
professional
we
sheepdogs
need
like
more
Cenk
than just
Uygur.
lefty pundits to not be spineless dimwits. We have to convince enough
How?
left-curious liberals that the Democrats suck. The only way to convince them that the Democrats suck is to prove to them that even when they have power, they will not wield it on behalf of ordinary people. We had that opportunity with Obama,
Let me
but the left was asleep under Obama. The left is not asleep anymore.
tell me how that works out for you when we get there. We don't know yet. So, but I'm saying
I just
that
don't know how you can make the argument that 4 more years of Trump is going to help build our numbers to the point where we can do this. Now, look, I think whether Trump wins or Biden wins, we're going to have to do this work.
I never said that. That's a straw man. I didn't say that.
Okay,
I didn't
so
say
go
that
ahead.
4
Clarify.
years
I don't
of
want to
Trump,
misrepresent what you said. Go ahead.
I don't think 4 years of Trump is going to give us the numbers to build a movement. I think it's going to give us. I think it's going to give us chaos. I think it's going to give us blood in the street. I think it's going to give us absolute shambles. I think that the poor people, even up halfway or more up the, maybe up to the top 90%, who knows? But at least 60 or 70% of the people, if everything falls apart, are going to be hurting. I think that leftists will start to arm themselves and start to talk about the Second Amendment the way rightists do. I'm thinking people would actually have the balls to do a general strike. I'm talking about burning it down. That's also Movement for a People's Party had a guest on. I don't know if you saw her, but it was Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan was their featured speaker. That's what Rose said. She said, I'm for burning it all down. I'm not good at micro. I'm better at macro. I don't think when Obama had the supermajority, when Obama had everything ready to go, where were we? I wasn't paying attention. I thought, great, we elected Obama. Everything will be fine now.
Right. Neither was
I think that'll happen with Biden, too. I don't think that anyone's going to be paying attention. I don't think all these people are going to materialize the way you say they will.
Yeah, but that to me, I've heard that argument made before, that everything will just go back to normal. And I don't think that we, as leftists, I think we really sell short what we've done in the past 5 years, if we actually believe that. If we actually believe that if a corporate Democrat wins, things will go back to normal and all of this energy will go away, then we're really saying something pretty hopeless about what we've done so far. We're basically admitting that we haven't really done anything to this point.
We haven't.
And I don't believe we haven't. I think swelling DSA membership is a good thing. I think Sunrise Movement is a good thing. I think Movement for a People's Party is a good thing.
It's weak
and
teeth.
I think that's the only way forward.
The
only way forward is to organize. Even if your accelerationist vision of the future holds up.
The DSA doesn't have anything. They have a weak T amendment. They said they were Bernie or bust. They're not Bernie or bust. What good are these movements if the people's convictions are so weak?
I saw that piece. You're referring to the piece in the World Socialist website where they said that the DSA went all in for Biden. That was a deceptive headline. They did not go all in for Biden. No,
I don't think they're all in for Biden.
A few people went off the reservation.
They're not Bernie or bust. They said they had a resolution that was weak teeth. They had no teeth in it. They're not telling their members any more than you're telling your viewers that they should never vote for corporatists. And so,
and the reason they're not doing that is because that undermines their organizational capacity. You're driving a wedge right through the middle of your movement over something that's going to be over in 8 days.
It's not a movement if the people are weak ass.
But I just don't accept that voting for Joe Biden over Donald Trump makes you weak ass. Now, I have said before. I know you do. And I have said before that, and we've had this conversation, that you do have to make up for that by doing the kinds of things that we're talking about. Strikes, marches, sit-ins, all of that, right? If you're just voting for Joe Biden and planning to go back to brunch and get your life back to normal, that's not good enough. And we absolutely need to shame people who do that. And I think I do plenty of that.
We're all too fucking reasonable. We're all way too reasonable to ever get this job done that needs to get done.
but you when you say we're too reasonable,
Pragmatic, whatever you want to say, whatever.
Okay,
Vosh
but how
would
do you
say.
build? I mean, you said earlier that we have to build our own institutions up. Yes.
But they have to be built with people who don't have their convictions tempered by sheepdogs and people like Gabrielle Riquetti or Noam Chomsky.
Right, but okay, but in order to build institutional power, you do have to be a bit reasonable. You understand? Just like fundamentally, you can't build an organization of any power or any influence at all.
Then you have to take dark money.
If you're not at all reasonable.
Then you're going to be on that slippery slope that eventually will lead you right back to where the DNC is now.
No, I think what we have to say, we have to make a blood oath, in your words,
okay,
not to support Democratic primary challengers, at least not at the presidential level. Down ballot, yeah, you want to slip a socialist in on a Democratic primary level for state Senate? Okay, because the establishment's not going to be watching you that closely where they're going to mobilize against you. Presidential politics, no, this ain't going to work. It's clear this ain't going to work. This has been proven to us twice. We come back a third time, we are the idiots that a lot of people think we are. And so
it isn't just a
we
third
can't
time.
do that.
It's probably the eighth or ninth time.
Yeah, but I mean,
100 years. It's been 100 years that this has been going on with the DNC. I've done some historical analysis.
No, that's right. That's actually right. I mean, it's right that they mobilize against the progressive in the race. The Bernie thing was unique because he's not a Democrat. That's what made the Bernie thing especially unique. But you're right. They crushed Dean. They didn't have to crush Kucinich because he never really took off. But Dean was a front runner going into Iowa, just like Bernie was a front runner going into Iowa, right? They crushed him. So, yeah, we can't do that anymore. But we do have to build this institutional power. And it's my opinion that until we do that kind of work, that we can't make demands of people on how to vote in elections where there is no viable candidate that represents us on the ballot. People are going to participate in an election. Now, look, if I thought there was a future, if I thought that party existed, if I thought that we already had that in, say, the Green Party, then I'd be telling people to go vote for Hawkins. But I don't. The Green Party has not gotten it done. The Green Party's been around for 24 years. They can't crack 2% in a national race. I live 30 miles south of New Paltz, New York, where they elected a mayor. That's like their claim to fame after 24 years. It's not going to happen. We need something new. We need something that's going to make a big splash, that's going to have star power. You mentioned Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan's a huge name. And Rose McGowan, rape victim of Harvey Weinstein, a very high profile. She has skewered Democrats as being just vile, opportunistic hypocrites on issues of sexual abuse towards women. She's obviously a major critic of Donald Trump. And so, those are the kinds of people who are going to draw attention. Rose McGowan does an interview. We talk about it. What have the Greens done? I mean, where is this? Where is the evidence that the Greens are in a position to build this kind of power?
I blame the lefty pundits.
It just hasn't happened.
How many lefty pundits are telling us to vote green? Chris Hedges said he endorsed Howie Hawkins, and also Jimmy Dore had Howie on.
Yeah,
and I did on my show too. Howie came on my show too.
I know. I mean, look, I think you're putting a little too much stock in the lefty pundits. I think there's a lot more to it than that. We need to get organized, and we need to get serious about obtaining power and wielding it. And I think the only way to do that is to grow our numbers. And
I think the only way to grow our numbers is to get the messaging. I don't think we can get the messaging without the lefty pundits. I don't think we can do what you're talking about without the narrative management. What do you call that? Without the antidote. We need the narrative management antidote. I had a Biden moment there. What's that word? Oh, I can't think of the word.
Look, I mean, I think once again, I mean, we could wrap soon because we're starting to say things 2 or 3 times over. But I think it's an order of operations disagreement that we have. I think we have to build these institutions up before we can get people on board. I think if a star runs, and I have good reason to believe that a major star will be the MPP candidate for president in 4 years. I think if that happens,
Nina,
after 4 years, well, you're really warm there. But if that happens after 4 years, if that happens in 2024, I think there is going to be major support for that candidate. Now, in my opinion,
I'm not going to vote for her. She's a Democrat. She told me to vote for Biden.
Like I said, as an MPP candidate.
Yeah, if she breaks with the Democrats, then Nina could do it.
As an MPP candidate, okay, I think they're going to have a major name that's going to get millions of votes. Now, look, in my opinion, she's going to get more votes if Biden is president than if Trump is president. That's my opinion. You might disagree with that. You might think it's going to be easier to rally support behind Nina Turner for the MPP candidate in 2024 with Trump as president. The reason I don't think that is the case...
Neither of us can prove it, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, we can't prove it, but I have good reason to believe that Donald Trump in the White House is going to cause liberals to hide behind Democrats, hide behind the institution that is already there. You know, we wonder why we can't get people of color into our movement enough, right? We wonder why. Why did Bernie not win the black vote, right? You know,
he did win the young black vote. He didn't win the young black vote.
But, you know, there's a thing, and this is uncomfortable to talk about because I always think I'm coming across as like tokenizing people when I talk about this. But as someone who grew up in a majority minority area, my school district was a third Hispanic, a third black, and a third white. At my place of work now, at a UPS warehouse, most of my coworkers are black people. All right. And again, I don't say this to be like some liberal with all, street cred. Oh, I know black people. That's not what, and I'm always conscious of like coming off that way. The reason why Bernie Sanders and the progressive movement struggles to win black votes is because we have not proven yet that we are serious about obtaining and wielding power. And marginalized communities vote for the candidates that represent institutional power because they feel like if you have institutional power behind you, you can win the goddamn election and at least give them 10% of what they want versus the Republicans who they view as the overt racist, right? Now, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying this is how that works. If we want to start building an actual diverse working class movement and bring people of color into this movement, which is an absolute necessity, then we have to get serious about obtaining power. And there's nothing less serious than this ultra woke campus sort of, identity politics stuff. Right. And too many progressives are under the impression that the way to win the black vote is to go ultra woke. That's not the case. This is a little off topic.
No. But we need to go working class. We need to go grubby.
Right.
But I feel like that. I'm always talking about grubby populism.
Right.
That's what our movement needs.
Anyway, I got a little off topic there, but the point is, in order to grow this, we have to prove that we're serious about winning, and we have to build up these institutions. And I think we have to do that before we can be too demanding about how people vote. You think you think the opposite.
I don't want them.
The prerequisite.
Yeah, I don't want them. I don't want to be part of a movement that votes for corporatists. I don't want to be part of Nick Brana's movement. I don't want to.
So then let's build that.
I'm not in. I'm not going to join that movement if they're so mamby-pamby.
Okay, so let's just give you an extreme hypothetical situation. This is an extreme hypothetical situation. I want to make 100% clear this is not where I'm coming from here. All right, but let's just say that 90% of MPP's members vote for Biden, and they run Nina Turner in 4 years against whoever. Whether it's Biden, whether it's Kamala,
I'd vote green.
Whether it's Trump.
I would vote green.
You would vote green?
Yep.
Over that. You would say, no, I'm not voting for you because you guys caved and voted for Biden.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's how you feel, I mean, once again, to me, that demonstrates a lack of seriousness about power. We don't have anything if we don't have power.
I'd rather be a purist.
All right. Well, look.
I'd rather have my moral convictions. I'd rather believe that I'm doing the right thing. I don't
Chris
go along
Hedges
to
says
get
the
along.
same exact thing.
And that's why the MPP will end up right where the DNC is, because they don't have those moral convictions.
Well, first of all, like I said, that was a hypothetical. I'm just saying that hypothetically.
I get
all right, just to try and demonstrate a certain point. But look, that's what Hedges says. Hedges says, I don't fight fascists because I'm going to win. I fight them because they're fascists.
Right.
He admits that he's impractical. I think we have to get serious about winning. We have to win.
I don't think it's winning when you give up your moral convictions.
But they're not voting for Biden next time. In other words, let's just say they voted for Biden this time, and they're going to play sport. Look, they're probably going to end up in a spoiler type of role next time. If they take 3 million votes, it's probably going to be mostly from Democrats. Right?
They're pretending. They don't have the guts. If they can't refrain from voting for a corporatist now, they couldn't refrain from voting for Hillary then. I don't want them. I don't want to be part of that.
They don't have any evidence that they are saying that people should vote for Joe Biden. They're not saying that. That's not what they're saying.
I don't want to be part of that.
They're just not going as far as you are. And I think I've talked about why they're not doing that. They're not doing that because the reason they say they're not doing that, and I take them at their word, and I think this is a good reason, because they don't want to fracture the movement over that. And the second reason, the reason I would say, is because I'm not sure that it's going to be to our benefit. I don't see a left case for reelecting Trump. I don't see any of that. And this goes back to the very thing.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we have to do what's right in every circumstance, the way Chris Hedges would. And it's not right to vote for assholes. Don't do it.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess, I don't know, should we wrap there? I feel like we're saying everything 3 or 4 times.
I think we got to the logical conclusion.
Okay. All righty, cool. Well, Alan, it's always a pleasure. I'll talk to you on the other side. I hope you're stocked on canned food and everything you need to get through the weeks following the election, because you're in a swing state.
Yeah.
But where are you? Where are you in Pennsylvania? Are you in a rural area, or are you going to be in a hot zone?
I used to be closer to the Rust Belt. I used to be on the west side of the state of Pennsylvania, but then the neoliberals took over the higher education system, and they're trying to consolidate universities. So long story short, I ended up close to Philadelphia. All right. I'm within an hour of Philadelphia, and within 3 hours of New York City. And I've driven produce to Newburgh. I've been in your area delivering produce.
Have?
Quite a few times I drove from here to Newburgh, so I'm within shouting distance of you.
Oh, well, next time you're up, but you don't drive a truck anymore.
I might have to. Depends on who wins. It depends on how the economy goes. But if my economy goes,
well, let me ask you something.
Even a tick lower, I'm going to have to start driving again.
Okay, so under which electoral outcome are you more likely to have to drive a truck again?
I don't know. That would take more.
Oh, come on! Now you're
I don't really see how you could know, because the economy is pretty ticklish. Even if the economy is good, then higher education will do better. So whatever makes I think people in state government are really worried right now because of COVID. And so the worrying causes people to close down higher education. So if I get retrenched like I did when I worked on the west side of the state, then I'll absolutely be driving a truck. But I honestly don't know which candidate would be more likely. Some people think that the economy would do better under Trump than under Biden. And I don't know.
That might be true. That might be true. And I think the reason that might be true is because Trump is going to force the economy open again, whereas Biden might be less likely to do that.
Yeah, so I might be better off with Trump.
That may come with a very, tragic human cost, but that's certainly possible. Like in terms of numbers, there might be more growth under the first couple of years of Trump than Biden because of that, because he's willing to sacrifice another, 500,000 people at the altar of the market, and that might do good for the market. We will see, but look, it's just. it's such a horrible situation. I mean, I don't want to get too much into that because we have to wrap soon, but like, you know, just to see Biden, to see Obama out there in Florida saying, you know, now if Joe Biden was a socialist, you'd know about it already. I mean, it just shows you how much work there is to do. Yeah. I mean, it's just incredible. Yeah. It's just so unbelievably obscene.
You, Barack Obama.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Second that. I mean, it's just, 100 years ago, when we had the Great Depression, the country took that as an opportunity to rethink the system and improve the system. And out of that, we got a New Deal. We got Social Security out of that. What kind of rethinking is happening right now? Nothing. We're doubling down. The debates are all, are you sure you want to spend $2 trillion on a climate plan? People are nervous about that.
And we're going to vote for those assholes.
Yeah.
Neo-libs.
Yep.
I don't want to be a part of any movement with that kind of people.
All right. Well, look, my final point will be that in 8 days or whatever it is, 10 days, 8 days by the time people hear about it, whatever, this election will be over. And there's going to be massive amounts of work to do in the wake of that. And we're going to need all hands on deck. And so I'm not voting for Joe Biden. I'm not advising anybody to vote for Joe Biden. My goal is to keep as much strength as possible in this movement. And I think that requires organizational capacity, which requires as many hands on deck as possible. And so I'm not as upset as you are about people going into a voting booth and voting however they want. I still believe that we have some capacity to organize in the wake of that, no matter who people vote for and no matter who wins, quite frankly.
My final statement is that we don't have a movement if we've got people who don't know how to stop voting for corporatists.
All right. Fair enough. Well, Alan, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining. And please, everybody, subscribe to Revolution or Bust podcast and the Howl Underground YouTube channel. And everybody who's listening on Alan's feed, subscribe to the Due Dissidence podcast and the Due Dissidence channel. All righty, man. Well, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this.
You too. Thank you.